Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Thursday, December 12th, 2024. Okay, 12/12/24. In case lottery players are out there today. And remember, when you hit it big, send us a gigantic check, will you? Thank you very much. Good morning. It's time to set another show in motion. Plenty happening. And, of course, tomorrow we are away from the microphone live, but I have already been able to put down a pre-recorded show for you, but now today we go through the weird time travel trick where I try to remember that there are some things that I probably will want to refer to today that I haven't told you yet, but I did tell you. I told you yesterday. I remember telling you, but you haven't heard me tell you it yet. It's a bit of a conundrum, but I see also some of the stories that I still was trying to shoehorn in before the weekend and still couldn't do, and I'm hoping to get to today are in today's roundup already, so that's good news. Greg Dworkin standing by, ready to bring you those stories. We have more wacko appointments to go over. You know, none of them of as much consequence as some of the worst ones that are already hanging out there. I don't know what he's trying to hide and where he's trying to hide them, but we'll find out. Let's see. Oh, yes, right. Justice reminds me. Kari Lake has landed a job for herself as head of Voice of America. Do they do more than radio programming now these days? It was an interesting announcement that I saw for her that somebody screen grabbed from Truth Social, I guess, and brought over to Blue Sky. And I'm not really sure why people still do that, but they do. And yeah, it was funny because somebody had said, you know, he can't even make an announcement like this. He can't say anything without insulting somebody. But I'm not sure who they thought was being insulted. I mean, I think there were a couple of insults in there, but the big insult was, oh, well, she's going to make sure that our media, broadcasts the truth and not the fake news like the lying losers that we hate at all the major networks and mainstream media, et cetera, et cetera. But the other insult that was in there was she's landed this job, and he goes on to say, and she'll be, I'm not actually appointing her. I'm going to direct the director of global communications for the United States, who I haven't picked yet to name her, but blah, blah, going on and then yelling at the newspapers. But it was like, well, I'm sure Kari Lake is sitting there like, well, how come you didn't give me the big job and I'll appoint somebody for Voice of America? Why did I get I'm reporting to somebody you haven't even picked yet? But that's kind of where Kari Lake that's the place Kari Lake now occupies in the Donald Trump universe. She's been clobbered every time she runs for office. She's still hanging on, still hoping to get, and now she's landed a job. Although, isn't she still governor of Arizona because she won like 100 times in a row or something? Anyway, so there you go. We've got that going on. And yes, the other thing that Justice reminds me of is that Christopher Wray, still current, director of the FBI, has decided to avoid problems and jump out of the way. Everybody was worried, wondering why Donald Trump was saying he wanted to name Kash Patel director of the FBI when there was no vacancy. And, statutorily, there's a 10-year term for the director of the FBI, and that causes all sorts of problems all by itself. But his term isn't over. And so therefore, even though we've all watched Donald Trump fire an FBI director in the middle of their term already, so you don't even have to just imagine that happening. You know that he can and will do that. But then Chris Wray announced yesterday that he would resign, and I guess the idea is he would resign on January 20th rather than, I guess, hang around an extra day and be fired. I guess he didn't want to go through the indignity of being fired, but everybody, I don't know. I was watching big resistance-type accounts on social media saying, I can't believe it. We were instructed, the instructions for dealing with incoming fascism are to don't comply in advance. What are you doing, Christopher Wray? This is crazy. This is rolling over for the Donald Trump fascist juggernaut. And I was just, I don't know, for some reason they forget this, that Christopher Wray plays for the other team. Christopher Wray, like all FBI directors, every single FBI director in history, is a Republican, and he was nominated to the job by Donald Trump, which is sort of ironic in that he's firing him now, but, is a guy who owes his career, the pinnacle of his career, this job, the FBI director, to Donald Trump. Is he going to hang around and make trouble for Donald Trump, or is he going to play the Donald Trump game and get out of the way? Of course he's going to get out of the way. I'm surprised that surprised that the biggest resistance type accounts, although I guess they're very often very grifty, don't either remember this or just say, I don't know, I'm going to get clicks with this, so I'm going to do it. And it's kind of annoying. Anyway, Greg Dworkin is here. He's not about the clicks. He's about sharing the news. So let's do that. Good morning, Greg. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm not about the clicks. I'm just here to be annoying.
Yeah. That's what social media is all about.
Yeah, well, I would think. That's what friends are for.
Yeah, that's right. If you want quiet, don't turn your phone on.
So a couple of things to follow up on from the intro.
Oh.
First of all, this is from the internets, so it must be true. Voice of America, which is part of the U.S. Agency for Global Media, broadcasts news internationally in 49 languages on radio, television, and online to an audience of an estimated 354 million people per week. According to its website, it first began broadcasting in 1942. So, yeah, Kari Lake would be associated with a relatively minor language translation program. I say that because I was a resident at Elmhurst Hospital in Queens where 150 languages were spoken. This is nothing.
Okay.
We didn't have translator phones at the time.
Hey, man,
and
speak
there
English.
were fewer rules about who could be bonded to be trusted to translate as there are now.
I see.
So in those days, you just got on the loudspeaker and said, anybody speaking Swahili, please come to the emergency room as soon as possible. You speak Mandarin, please show up in the OBGYN clinic.
If you're in surgery, don't leave.
Yeah.
But, okay.
So patients would come and they would translate for other patients. And that's just
nice
the way it was. And it worked.
Sure.
And it wasn't optimal, but, what could you do? 150 languages, you're not going to have somebody on staff who speaks everything.
No. But you could have somebody who pretends.
So 49 languages, that's pretty good. But as you point out, apparently she won't be the head of the Agency for Global Media, though she's probably going to be special temporary weekend assistant to Seb Gorka, who's the associate director of something.
Oh, yeah, right. Sebastian Gorka is back.
That dreadful Hungarian.
That's the guy. Everybody knows him that way.
So, what happens is Trump appoints all these minor figures to minor positions.
Yeah.
And you pointed out it's not clear in the Constitution whether she can do this while still being governor. But don't forget, she has to be governor and senator.
Yes, that's right. She's now occupying both. That too is unconstitutional, but only in the one that's printed. So
right.
Don't
the other
worry
thing
about
that you mentioned and alluded to, which really had struck me, and I was going to say something about it today.
Yeah, what was it?
Is that it's just so odd to me that, look, you got to give Manchin credit. He voted for a lot of things while he was there. He voted against a lot of things while he was there, but he voted for stuff, and so Democrats are able to get some things done. The latest thing he did is vote in opposition to the Democrats.
Hey, what are you doing?
On staffing the National Labor Relations Board.
Right.
So that will allow Republicans to take it over, which is really too bad. But, as an industry guy, he's not real big on labor. I get that.
Yes, but he should be retiring.
Somebody from a coal mining state, F you.
Yeah.
But the point is, Democrats on the whole, even in their own twisted sort of fashion, basically try to do the right thing. Republicans, on the other hand, just totally give up. They bend over. They fold. They do whatever the party says they're supposed to do. It's remarkable.
Yes.
There's the only one who doesn't do that is Lisa Murkowski, and she's an independent.
Yeah, and also very frequently does it anyway.
Not like Susan Collins, who also isn't like the most of the rest of them. It's really remarkable.
Yeah, they have different gradations of surrender monkey, I guess.
But there you have it. So I thought I would start today's segment overseas.
And then what happened? I distracted you.
We started talking about this, but overseas, two things of note. South Korea, we haven't mentioned South Korea, we've been talking about Syria. One thing to say about Syria is there is circulating video done by locals who are going into these various and sundry prisons that are hidden in various and sundry places, like under candy stores and stuff. They think they found an American.
Prisons. Oh.
And so there's a circulating video. U.S. believes circulating video online is possibly an American. They're going to try to track that down.
Is it the long-term American prisoner that I've actually heard of? Oh.
No, this is Travis Pete Timmerman.
Okay.
Another American, Austin Tice, that's the one you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Is thought to be alive somewhere, but they don't have any evidence of that.
All right, let's go.
So, as you open up those prisons, you find stuff. It was a remarkable, absolutely remarkable, assuming it wasn't staged, clip from CNN where they were reporting from inside one of the opened prisons.
Okay.
And they came across a locked door.
And to call
and they wanted
Geraldo
to
Rivera
get in to see if there was anybody inside, and if so, if it were this missing American or any other people they could identify. The guard opened the door. It was the only one that hadn't been unlocked. And there was a guy in there, just a bare room, under a blanket, local, who was just stunned that, he was rescued.
Huh. Okay.
Live. The whole thing was live. It was pretty amazing.
Eat your heart out, Geraldo. There was somebody in the vault.
There was more in here than there was in the vault. That's absolutely right.
Okay. Well, that is interesting, and they probably don't have to stage that. That probably really is happening, but okay.
Right. And you can listen to all the analysis you want right now over the next week to 10 days, at least.
Yes.
The major story coming out of Syria is going to be those prisons.
Yeah. There's people who've been missing for decades.
Who was in them, how they got there, how many there are.
Whose prison is it even?
Can you let people out? All that stuff.
Yeah, that's going to be really amazing. And I was fascinated by the idea of just sort of, if we've got guns and a basement, we could open a prison.
Yeah.
Put anyone you want
got a
in
room
it.
without windows, we're in.
Yeah. That's it. So, it's like Airbnb for prisons. Except
exactly.
I don't know if anyone was getting paid, but
I do feel like we have covered this for your Kagro in the Morning listeners. So it's like, this isn't a surprise story. You've been hearing about it all week. And so this is just the culmination of everything we've been talking about. Now, South Korea.
Yeah.
Some process issues here.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
President Yoon, you may recall, out of the blue, declared martial law ineptly.
I have something about the out of the blue, but all right.
All right, good. So the Parliament, the Assembly, didn't like it, didn't agree.
Bad.
And both the ruling party that he is of, the People's Party, and
no, it isn't.
That's what they call themselves.
Well,
and the opposition party voted unanimously to rescind that martial law declaration. Now, as part of the process of instituting this martial law declaration, he sent security forces over to the Parliament to prevent them from voting.
Why that dirty
The
rotten?
argument on the table now was that technically insurrection because he used armed forces to try to subvert and prevent some official legal thing from happening.
Don't get too technical. It is. Just
Don't get too
it.
technical. It sounds like January 6th. So, because the declaration was rescinded, Yoon basically went on TV and apologized right before the impeachment vote that it sparked. That impeachment vote failed because even though
it's very
the ruling party, the People's Party, his own party, voted unanimously with the opposition to rescind the martial law declaration, they didn't go all in on impeachment. So he apologized and then skated by on the impeachment vote. But it doesn't stop there.
No.
Because two separate things are happening. From the impeachment vote point of view, the opposition says they're going to bring an impeachment vote every week until they succeed.
Hey, that's an idea.
And the head of the People's Party, Yoon's own party, this time says he'll support it.
Oh.
So they may have enough
a
votes.
Different person in the
People's
Party.
If he's impeached, then it has to be ratified by the Constitutional Court, which is their Supreme Court, and then you get a new election. That'll take months, according to NPR. But that process is underway, and at some point they'll probably succeed in impeaching him.
Yes.
Separate track, Yoon then gives a speech and says, remember when I apologized? I didn't really mean it.
I rescind that. Wow.
I want you to know that in my heart of hearts, I believe that there's nothing wrong, both morally and constitutionally and legally, with the president of South Korea fulfilling his constitutional rights to declare martial law. And therefore, because I was in my rights to do that, I can't possibly have participated in insurrection, so you can't arrest me.
Oh, really?
That's his claim.
I haven't yet, but okay.
The problem is, first of all, in trying to investigate whether this is so, the Parliament sent some investigators over to Yoon's office to see if they could find why he did this whole martial law thing, and they were prevented by force from getting in there. So when you talk about insurrection and using force to prevent official legal proceedings,
yes,
what is that?
That is insurrection.
Searching his office? Does that include stopping Parliament from voting? So there's a whole bunch of things that the opposition claims Yoon violated, and therefore is subject to arrest. Well, so that's happening separate track to whether or not he's going to be impeached.
They should put his office in his club in Florida. Then everything.
I haven't told you about any of this until just now. Your thoughts?
Okay. My thoughts is, that sounds familiar.
Doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And guess what? It's even more familiar than I knew. I came across a Blue Sky thread from, let's take a look, from Sang-Sin Lee. Sang-Sin Lee, a PhD political scientist at the Korea Institute for National Unification. And I don't know whether that's a hopeless task, but he had the most interesting thing to say there. The thread begins, well, it doesn't begin, but the second tweet or whatever we're calling it now, and it asks the question.
Post.
Yes, post, P-O-A-S-T. Why did Yoon declare martial law? And we haven't really found that out yet, but this is really interesting. This is likely the question, he says, on everyone's mind, and the answer, encapsulated in Oxford's new 2024 word of the year, brain rot, might surprise you. We haven't talked about the word of the year in brain rot, but now here's where he explains what's going on. No, he says, this is not a joke. Yoon justified the imposition of martial law in a brief speech that was so, let's see if this sounds familiar, so absurd and detached from reality, they're eating the cats and dogs, that no one initially believed it. However, evidence has since emerged suggesting that this speech genuinely reflected his beliefs. Yoon sincerely believed in a conspiracy theory, that sounds familiar, that painted the opposition party as a group of North Korean spies attempting to overthrow South Korea. It's not an insurrection, it's saving the country. He seemed to view martial law as a legitimate means to dismantle the opposition's so-called legislative dictatorship. Now, where it really takes an interesting turn, and there's an article that backs it up, and I'll share it with everybody. We'll read through the article later. It's already widely known that Yoon was deeply engrossed in far-right YouTube channels. He repeatedly appointed far-right YouTubers to senior positions, including several ministers. Almost exactly what we're doing right now with the Fox News lineup, of course. Yep. Even after after the failed insurrection, he appointed another far-right YouTuber to a minister-level position. It goes on for a little while, but it sounds like there's this amazing parallel nutcase to the one that's running this country. I mean, how terrible would it be if the leadership of the free world fell into the hands of a lunatic who was convinced by online conspiracies to fill his cabinet with fellow nutters and conspiracy theorists and stage an insurrection? What if he staged the insurrection before he was even elected to do this the second time? Right. That would really be something.
So basically, whereas the states, including the great state of Canada,
Yes.
Should be laboratories to the nation in terms of how to do things.
Yes.
Other countries, apparently, with their own right-wing nut jobs, historically from Hitler to, currently with South Korea, should be models for the United States so that we can figure out how to do this.
Yes. And as soon as we learn how to find out news,
on the other side, how to pull it off.
Yep. All we need is some sort of device that would bring us news from around the world instantaneously.
Yeah.
As soon as we invent that, I mean, come on.
I got it.
Make a time machine,
the
pal.
mimeograph.
Okay. That's right. And
the only thing is it'll stain your fingers purple.
Right. But if you inhale deeply, you can imagine almost anything from around the world instantaneously. Okay, well, it's a scary parallel. I can't use up all your time telling you about it, but it really is rather amazing. And they're dealing with it, and they are doing. The other thing that struck me as familiar, we didn't do it here, but I certainly reminded everybody, you can bring an impeachment resolution every week until it succeeds, if that's what you want to do, even in this Congress.
You can do that. I mean, there's no law that says, well, you did it once, therefore you're not allowed to do it again. It's like triple jeopardy or quadruple. There's no such thing.
That's right. Wow.
Anyway, coming back to the United States, I got a clip for you to play.
Oh, yes, right. I am ready.
Ready.
Well, I mean, you want to introduce it or anything, or I'll just roll it?
Just roll it.
Oh, okay. People will probably figure out at least one of the players here.
Yeah, and if not,
during
I'll
Trump's
tell you
first administration, sometimes we'd say, this is not normal. It wasn't normal. But it's also the case that what's normal is not necessarily okay.
Boom.
It is not okay.
Boom.
That people can't get an inhaler for their kid.
Amen.
And yes. we have to show that this pisses us off.
Oh my God, I'm getting excited. Yes.
You actually
Jon
have
Stewart.
to make the change.
Thank you.
You actually have to fight and make change in people's lives. That is the point of this work.
All right.
The only measure of work in politics, it's not actually winning elections. It's whether you deliver change in people's lives.
Yeah.
That is what winning looks like. That is the point of this work.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it is.
What am I listening to? I know.
You're listening to Ben Wikler, who's running for national chairman of the Democratic National Committee. He was and still is the Wisconsin chair.
Yes.
Did a great job in Wisconsin, is trying to move up.
Okay.
And his philosophy of what politics is about apparently is exciting Jon Stewart.
Yeah, which,
And with good reason. I mean, it's pretty good articulation of, like, what's going on here.
Yeah. Well, good. I mean, really, honestly, somebody needs to hit the restart button and re-engage Jon Stewart. Anyway, he's drifting a little bit.
Well, Ben is doing it. Ben needs to re-engage the country. Ben needs to re-engage Democratic voters.
Jon Stewart's a good test case.
So there you have the person running and why he's running. You never articulated why you want to run. Well, he just did. So we understand it. I don't know why Martin O'Malley's running.
He likes
I don't know
running.
why the guy running Wisconsin, not Wisconsin, I guess Minnesota's, the Democratic chair of Minnesota is the competition.
That may be
plus
just
Martin
a Wisconsin.
O'Malley, the three of them are like the top three contenders.
That might just be a Wisconsin-Minnesota thing. What? They're running the Wisconsin guy? I got to run.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let them just run on their own.
Right.
Boo.
So
Wisconsin.
Anyway, I just thought that was really quite interesting. So that's going on.
All right.
Big news today out of Washington. Joe Biden commutes nearly 1,500 sentences in the largest single-day grammar correction of all time. No, this is the largest single-day grant of clemency. Joe Biden announced he will commute the sentences to close to 1,500 people on home confinement during the pandemic, and will pardon 39 convicted of nonviolent crimes.
Okay. That's a lot of commuting.
If he did this, people would say that's great, and then if he did Hunter Biden, all they talk about is Hunter Biden. So he did Hunter Biden first, then he did this.
That's a thought.
And so, cool.
And there's probably more to come. He's very, I think, spending a lot of time pondering some big pardon moves, some of which may materialize and some of which may not, but I know everybody is on him to do these things, and I know they're on his mind. You can see, well, he did this. And with all that commuting, Danica Rome was very interested okay, I see. I thought this was about transportation.
Never
mind.
Thought it was about grammar, but
Got it.
We all have our own interests.
We're all a little confused.
Right. He's Joe Biden is going to commute the sentence of the Oxford comma, so it will no longer disappear.
Well, it's fine.
And by the way,
commute is taking too long. Okay. Right. We're
That's probably
fix
the last
all the
thing
injustices
as he leaves.
and turn out the lights.
Yeah.
So I know he's pondering, or he's being pushed to do an awful lot in terms of pardons. A lot of, I guess, the biggest
pre-pardons.
Yeah, that's true. The blanket pre-pardons of people who are going to be targeted by an incoming Trump administration. Also, issues with people who are on death row.
6th committee, people like that.
Yes. But lots of people who are on death row that probably should see their sentences commuted to, even if you're not pardoning people, you're commuting their sentences to life imprisonment, as there are a lot of very controversial capital cases looming out there that Donald Trump, among his many stupid promises, now promises to execute all these people and to do so as quickly as possible.
Red circuses, he'll probably do it on TV.
Yeah, well, you never know with this guy. So that is also
the ratings
weighing out there. I'm not certain I don't know. I mean, you'd hope that people don't want to see that, but this is America.
Well,
All right. Well, yeah, so there's lots of things still pending out there that I hope he's still pondering, and I don't know how quickly you do it. And the tradition, if there is one, for these kinds of pardons is these are last-minute things. The presidents on the way out do not really want to deal with the blowback, and they don't care, and they're out of there. So it may be a last-minute announcement, some of these things. But I know it keeps people on edge. You want to hear the news. Tell us already. So it's a little difficult. This is the hardest waiting period there is. We'll be minus this 2 minutes, which is the hardest one I've ever experienced. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. How was that 2 minutes for you? It was difficult, wasn't it? Well, the anticipation makes it all the better. Still have a large lineup of stories to go through here, though.
Not so large.
A small lineup of stories.
A small, large.
Would you like to supersize it? We can.
So today is December 12th.
Right.
And Saturday will be 12/14, a day of remembrance here in Newtown.
Ah, yes. Okay.
12 years ago, December 14, 2012, mass shooting, Sandy Hook Elementary School. And still to this day, Newtown says 26 people were killed.
Yes.
Actually, 28 died because the perp and his mom, who he killed. But locals generally don't count them.
It is interesting.
26 people died at the school. That's what people remember.
That's a correct statement.
So one of the kids was named Catherine Violet Hubbard.
Okay.
And this story is actually starting to make national news because they're very good at publicity. Newtown Learning Facility marks poignant milestone before Sandy Hook remembrance. The Catherine Violet Hubbard Animal Sanctuary held a barn raising yesterday ahead of the 12th year remembrance. That's what we call it. It's not an anniversary because you're not celebrating. It's remembrance of the Sandy Hook school shooting. This is an article in the local NBC Connecticut news site. Through each drill and peg being placed on Catherine's learning barn, the memory of the 6-year-old Catherine Violet Hubbard will live on forever. This is a place that is in basically a field, and what they've erected is animal sanctuary facilities, a barn and a facility to rescue animals. That was her thing, the little girl.
Yeah.
And the families worked really, really hard on this. Now, one of the things that's interesting is that it's really a quiet, contemplative space outdoors with, a barn and some indoor facilities. But basically, it's not a tourist attraction, but people still sort of wander there just for like a quiet moment. And what folks who want to keep this the way it is are fighting are housing developers who want to build like 75 units overlooking the place in what is currently woods.
I see.
And so far they've been fought off on the basis of, well, they want to build on the hill and all this stuff that they build will flow downstream into a trout stream and pollute the trout stream.
Arg.
And therefore you can't do it. And so far the town has agreed, but developers are pernicious and very persistent. And part of the reason I tell this story is that one of the interesting things about development is the balance, the tension between overusing laws to stop progress versus cleverly using laws to stop things that shouldn't happen but are otherwise legal.
Yes. All right.
And that's what's happening here. I mean, using regulations. And Newtown has done this a number of times. Amazon wanted to build a giant warehouse with, these 18-wheelers, lorries, coming off and on a local road from the warehouse.
Yeah. Which
would snarl traffic and at the same time increase the tax base. So, like, the business people, Republicans loved it, and, like, normal people hated it.
Yeah.
And some environmental regulations were used to stop it.
Okay.
And so I'm sympathetic to that. I don't like the idea that you can't get anything done because there's too much red tape, but sometimes that red tape is, like, really useful.
Yeah. Like, stop. This is the reason
like,
the tape
you shouldn't
is red.
be doing this. And it doesn't matter whether it's legal or not.
Yeah.
I mean, Yoon in South Korea
he thinks it's legal.
Was within his rights to declare martial law. One can do that according to the South Korean Constitution. One shouldn't, which is what the country said to him.
Okay.
You can.
This is
but
an
that doesn't mean
difference.
You should.
That's right. That's right. These differences are important distinctions, especially for us as we enter the Trump era.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I want to highlight it. So the whole idea, well, I'm sympathetic to the whole Doge idea of, like, cut everything out. Well, no.
Would you like a seat in Congress? Jeez.
Anytime you do that without thought, you're doing wrong, most likely, and you're only going to find out later. And then again, when you look at some of the stuff they think is red tape and waste, they're thinking of, like, I don't know, VA healthcare.
Yes, and I know that there's
Federal
sometimes a school of thought where you think, I can use their own logic against them. Like, Bernie Sanders. There's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse in the Pentagon budget. There is, but they're not going to listen to you. Don't validate the process. It's not even a process. I know there's waste, fraud, and abuse, but that's why you're the ranking ranking member on the budget committee. You had chaired it. that was, that's the reason you were there, to try and do something about that. It, didn't work. You only had 2 years, whatever. But yeah, don't validate the Doge thing as an actual process. And don't think that they will say, you have me there, your logic is impeccable, we're going to have to cut the Pentagon. They're just going to say thanks for the support and do what they want to do and then ignore your cuts. It doesn't work.
Much.
I
speaking
appreciate
of
the
things
thought
that you could do but shouldn't do, we have North Carolina. The North Carolina GOP is losing their supermajority. They'll still be in charge, but they no longer will have a supermajority, and there is a Democratic governor in North Carolina. That means the governor can veto stuff, but with a supermajority, you can override it.
Yeah, okay.
Without the supermajority, you can't do that. So they just lost their supermajority, and so what do? Republicans in the state legislature gave an ally control over the state's elections board, rewrote ballot counting rules, and chipped away at the power of the incoming Democratic governor.
Oh, that sounds familiar, too.
Doesn't it? Sounds like Wisconsin.
Yeah, not Korea this time. Wisconsin.
What's the difference?
Ask Ben Wikler.
North Korea.
Ah, yeah, okay, well, that's true.
With the Republicans?
Very similarity.
I mean, what's the difference?
I don't know. Yeah, the only thing that can well, they don't feel
I mean,
that
they don't
their
kill
leader
people.
is dear.
I'll give them that.
Yeah, they don't love their leader
anyway.
the way the Koreans do. But so same play as everywhere.
As far as they're concerned,
we're just going to prohibit the people elected by the people of the state to do their jobs from doing their jobs, because they might do it differently than we would like it done.
So this is from the Washington Post.
All right.
Flexing power just before they lose their supermajority, Republicans in North Carolina's legislature overrode a veto Wednesday to give one of their allies control over the state's elections board, rewrite ballot counting rules, chip away at the governor's power. The move came as the Republicans sought to claim 3 seats in the legislature, as Republicans did, and a spot on the state Supreme Court by throwing out tens of thousands of ballots in races they lost this month.
What do you know? It's crazy.
The state Democratic Party is fighting that effort by asking a federal judge to ensure votes don't get tossed because of administrative errors. The developments offer the latest test for democracy in the swing state while highlighting North Carolina Republicans' brand of go-to-the-mat politics. Courts could soon review how ballots were counted, and judges will almost certainly be asked to review the new law limiting the power of the incoming governor, Josh Stein. Guaranteed that law isn't passed if, what was his name? Bare Africa? Raw Africa?
Nude Africa.
Nude Africa.
Mark I forgot his name already. That's amazing. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you,
The
Brains.
dispute over the state Supreme Court is one of the last of its kind in the country.
Robinson,
Election disputes have been less protracted this winter than 4 years ago. Under the measure lawmakers approved Wednesday, Stein will lose the power to appoint members of the state and county elections board. These duties will be handed over to the incoming auditor, Dave Bolduc, who will be the first Republican to hold the job in 16 years.
Really?
The auditor generally is responsible for reviewing state finances and previously has not had a role in running elections.
Oh, what?
Republicans rushed the lame duck bill through the legislature to get it in place before they lose the veto-proof majority. The legislature passed the bill last month. Cooper vetoed it. The state Senate overrode the veto last week. House overrode it Wednesday. That'll put the law into effect and cue up an all but inevitable lawsuit.
Well, why doesn't somebody sue and say that they didn't put the right date on the envelope that they mailed the legislation to the governor in? I got to throw it out. Sorry.
Right.
It was Mark Robinson.
Oh, by the way.
Yes.
It wasn't just that they put the wrong date on it. They apparently voted for the wrong person.
Yeah. What are you doing?
So we got to fix that.
Yeah. The state Supreme Court seat that's still, I guess, still being settled, they were looking to throw out 60,000 ballots. Right. All the overseas voters, all the military votes, the military family votes, everything.
Crazy stuff going on.
Yeah.
And can they get away with it? Well, ultimately, the Supreme Court of the United States says they can because we're Republicans. Whatever your issue.
Yeah, maybe. Right. It's hard to tell.
Your issue, ultimately, the Supreme Court of the United States will say, if this benefits Republicans, we're for it, and if it benefits Democrats, we're against it.
Yeah, I mean, although now I think they look for signals from Trump.
And we told you in 2016, and nobody listened, and here we are.
Oh, well. Yeah, I don't know. And maybe something they're only willing to do for Donald Trump. It may be something they're willing to do for all Republicans, or they may take Trump giving a thumbs up, thumbs down tell them what to do. I can't tell who's in control, but for the moment, it overlaps enough such that it, in effect, is whatever Republicans want. Yes.
I mean, normally it's not a question because, like, when you lose, you concede. You know, that's the old convention. Exactly.
Boring. All right.
Anyway, this last piece, I wanted to remind everybody, the War of the Worlds. 1938, the Battle of Grover's Mills.
Yes.
Grover's Mill, excuse me.
Oh, there's another mill there now.
Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
You know, progress. The environmentalists tried to stop it, but it didn't work.
Yeah. Tom Malinowski, who used to be a congressman, said, lots of folks have asked me what we should make of all these drones being sighted all over New Jersey. We haven't had such excitement since aliens landed in Grover's Mill. Since there's no definitive answer from state or federal authorities, here are a few speculative thoughts. Drones have been reported spotted coming in from the ocean, so it's natural to suspect a foreign adversary is using them to spy on military bases.
In New Jersey.
But the drones are being seen at night with their lights blazing. Spy drones generally are, like, quiet.
Yeah, all right. That's not great. I mean,
if a foreign vessel, naval or cargo, were loitering offshore, Pentagon would know it, and they're not. There's no Iranian mothership, despite what Jeff Van Drew claims.
Oh, does he think so?
Yeah.
That's something. Okay.
Yeah.
Apparently there is not.
Right.
Good.
What's clear, said Tom Malinowski, is whoever's flying these drones wants to be seen. So could it be a group of hobbyists messing with us? Somebody deliberately trying to start a public debate about the need to improve drone defenses? No evidence that these drones are armed or pose a threat to people, but the potential's there. You know, Russia uses them with bad effect in Ukraine.
Yeah.
That's by the way, just as an aside, Ukraine with the U.S. is pioneering new drone defense. But then there's the question of who should have authority to take down a drone.
Yes.
Probably not civilians. And under what circumstance?
And yet, they probably will claim that, right?
We already banned drones over big sporting events, airports, and military bases. The FAA can declare exclusion zones.
New Jersey, for instance.
Yeah. Well, you know, maybe Trump will appoint Kari Lake to be head of the Voice of America and the FAA.
Yeah, right.
Why not? Because it doesn't make any sense, but nothing he's doing is making any sense.
Yeah.
What about other critical infrastructure? What about someone buzzing their drones right over your house? By the way, I don't think there's any law against somebody doing that.
Not yet. But yeah, they already are interfering with infrastructure. I do have another piece on this. This is an incredible thing. We haven't really had a chance to discuss this, but everybody's baffled by these things.
Yeah, bottom line, drones will be everywhere very soon in helpful but scary ways. We haven't taken seriously enough as our inability to say who's behind the New Jersey drone so clearly highlights.
Yeah.
So we need to update our technology and laws fast.
Yes.
And, you know.
And crypto. But
again, go back to our previous discussion. When the Doge people just come with a buzzsaw and cut everything, why are there regulations? Well, you know.
So that you don't have drones.
So you don't have drones buzzing your house at night.
Right. Like if your neighbor.
Well, I want to get rid of all this red tape. Well, this red tape is letting you sleep.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
not that red tape, all the other red tape.
It's very often in eliminating regulations that people come to remember the reason for the regulation in the first place.
Yeah. I don't.
That reminds me of something else. Yes.
Regulations that stop me from doing what I want.
No.
I don't mind regulations
I do want
that save me.
Right.
But get rid of all the other stuff.
Yeah. The bad stuff, you know.
Keep the good stuff and get rid of the bad stuff. You see, Trump talks like that to people.
Yes.
They understand him.
Well, we'll make a very good deal. We just will. I'm not sure what's going to be in it, but we'll make one. Yeah, people are a little dopey.
Not the deal part. Not whether or not he can actually pull it off. Not whether or not he'll outsource the doing of this to Saudi Arabia. But rather, I'm here to do good stuff and I'm against bad stuff. You say stuff like that, people understand it. You see, you can't talk like an academic or a Democrat. You have to speak the language of real people.
We're going to do a really good one. A really good deal. You know, there's a town in New Jersey, Deal, New Jersey. It's an oceanfront town. He should have put his club there. Yeah. Deal. We have to make a really great deal, and I just made one in Deal, New Jersey. I guess it can't be that far from.
Is there a tap
Atlantic
of
City.
ridiculous?
A ridiculous deal?
Yeah,
or
over
just...
there. That's ridiculous.
Whereas this is a great deal.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I don't think so, but we could work on it. Well, right down the shore, as they say in New Jersey. So, okay, near Asbury Park. If you're,
right, everything's near Asbury Park. New Jersey's not that big.
Right, you're always 40 minutes.
And if it's
from
not near
wherever
Asbury Park, it's near the Palisades.
You're right, the other
It's
area.
near Palisades Park.
Right, there's a lot of parks. This whole thing. Yeah, well, so the drones in New Jersey are apparently quite a problem, not just because no one knows whose they are, and they really don't. That's one of the really weird things about it is lots of people are asking questions, and the federal government is saying, anybody? State? Do you know what? No, state government doesn't know, federal government doesn't know, so they figure it's a private actor of some kind. But apparently, well, according to the HuffPost reporting on these things, they are, in some cases, enormous as drones go. They're like, reportedly, some of these are car-sized, or as one person said, the size of my dining room table. These are giant drones, and they're all lit up, but apparently, when you're trying to track them and figure out what the hell are these drones, when you get eyes on them, they turn their lights off and zoom, disappear, kind of. I mean, it's the kind of thing that people used to say, these are aliens.
Curiosity, where do you buy these things? Is there a drone catalog?
Is
there a drone store at the mall?
Yes, there.
And
yes,
and if there is,
I don't know.
Then why don't they have a record of who they sold it to?
Because regulation, what do you want? Red tape and the whole registry of who has drones? It's tyranny. They'll come for you. I don't know. I mean, what's amazing here is, by the way, right, this has happened because we don't want no regulations. And by the way, all the people who used to say, we don't want no regulations, before they were screaming about that, they were screaming about being pestered on their property by black helicopters. and guess what? Now they're being pestered on their property by black helicopters, and they want regulation. It's pretty amazing. But these things are huge, and other internet meme fans will also appreciate the volume in which they are appearing. It says here, one goes over, then another, then another. It's not just one drone at a time. It's not 2 or 3 a night. It's 30 or 50 a night will overfly your property. And, of course, that's the worst thing.
Shower, except every day.
Or the worst thing since it was 30 to 50 feral hogs bothering people at the time. But those were on the ground and easy to shoot. These, not so much.
But they were invulnerable, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, right. That's true, too. And that's why you need an AR-15. And now people will be doing that. They'll want AR-15s and claim the right to shoot these drones down. But apparently there are huge drone parades going on over people's property, and they're baffled and unsettled and want to know what the hell is going on.
That's why Malinowski's point about who gets to take them down is important.
Right. New Jersey is not an easy place to just spray bullets in the air and not hurt somebody. You can do that. I mean, you shouldn't do that, but you could get away with it in Wyoming in some places, perhaps.
Right. And New Jersey is so small that if you sprayed bullets in the air, somebody would get hurt in Syria.
Yeah, it's true. That's
how small
the most densely populated. Is it still the most densely populated state in the country?
New Jersey?
It's damn near close. So, well, it's really bizarre, and they're trying to they still don't know who the hell is flying these things. I was reminded by what you said of something else. The people who say, to hell with regulations and red tape, and it is only in the absence of these things that you come to realize, hey, maybe that was a good thing, a good idea. Word comes from The Guardian, of course, because they're from the UK, that a majority of Brexit voters that were polled say they would now accept free movement, that is, of goods and people, in and out of, as in between Britain and Europe, in exchange, and this is novel, for access to the European single market. It sounds like an awful lot. That combination of free movement of goods and people and services between countries and reciprocal access to the single market is, the European Union.
Well, are you saying that they claim they were wrong?
No. They just want that.
They just want what they voted against.
Yes. I'm not certain what you mean by this whole vote against thing, but look, it's very clear what we want, and I don't understand why you politicians are standing in the way.
It's like the Infrastructure Act. I'm against it, but I really want what it has, and I'm going to claim credit for it.
This is tyranny. I can't wait to start that project.
Yes.
So there you have it. I mean, it didn't take long for them to realize it, but we're in that situation where we now have to decide, all right, well, we don't have to. The UK voters have to decide.
Why do people make fun of voters? I don't know.
But will the UK voters say, just whatever, humor them so we can put this thing back together? Or will they say, oh, no. We're going to put it back together, but we are going to pillory you people who took it apart the first time.
Well, as I finish my segment, I just want to say Ben Wikler's onto something. You got to speak plain to people. Tell them what's going on here, right? It's not normal, but normal isn't really helping anybody. The CEO of United Healthcare getting shot is absolutely not normal. Should never be normalized. It's horrible. That's not how you do things. Normal is how United Healthcare functions. And that's awful.
That's true. Normalcy, very bad in that sense. So we could disrupt some normal. Doesn't have to be all the normal.
Well, you don't have to disrupt. Just change.
Well, okay.
Just fix it.
Even if you're doing it gradually.
Make it good instead of bad. Again, you got to talk the language of people.
You know, it's hard to argue with that language. I prefer good to bad. Me too. We're on the same side. That's surprising to me, but okay. Well, Ben Wikler, I'm glad he's making inroads. He's done a fantastic job. We've talked him up a number of times here on the show, and not because we're going to get anything out of it, because we didn't live in Wisconsin. We were just saying, hey, they're doing a really good job in Wisconsin. I wish we had a guy like that. And now we can have a guy like that. It's a bigger job and a very different job running a state party than being chair of the DNC, and actually a lot less ability to do really good things electorally and rebuild the party. But, you know, somebody's got to have their hand on the tiller, and you might as well have somebody who's had some success in changing the electoral fortunes of the Democratic Party in a state that they were almost entirely frozen out of by gerrymandering. And now, having reversed much of that and risen to national prominence, it might be helpful to, bring that sensibility to I guess, to Washington. So maybe he could buy Joe Manchin's houseboat to live on.
Probably up for sale. In any case, that's it for me for today.
All right. Not bad. All right. Thank you very much for carrying us all the way through. And I'm gonna be like you. I'm gonna take off tomorrow. So, but I'll leave a recorded program behind. This is the hardest thing for me to do now. I know what I discussed, and it's not like a spoiler or anything, but, there's material I want to reference, but it hasn't happened yet. So.
Oh, you could reference it.
This is what, tomorrow you're going to hear about this, and you
can do it
make
like
sense.
They do on the news shows.
Oh?
Something happened, and we'll tell you what it is.
At 11.
Back from the commercial.
Right. Your house is on fire. Film at 11. What?
But they'll name people. This guy did something, and they'll name him. And they'll tell you what he did after the commercial.
Right. He pet a kitten. Oh, I thought he was involved in a robbery. That's terrible. All right, Greg, I'm glad to hear you're involved in a robbery. We'll talk to you on Monday. No further comments at this time. Okay. All right. And if you think of anything at the last minute or even afterwards,
I'll send it over, as always.
Yeah, backdoor always available there. So, okay. Let's see. You know what? I'm going to read that story I had about the Korean elections, and you can just listen along, but we can use that time between now and the top of the hour break to fill in the blanks. That and, I guess, more about those drones, just because it was wild and crazy. All right. I got to jump back into Pocket in order to find the drone the Korea story. So I read the bulk of that thread. I didn't get all the way through it, but it's I guess at this point we'll go to the story and read things that way. Can I just find that thing again? This is really a funny thing too. Over in South Korea, I guess the YouTube craze, like the far-right rabbit hole version of YouTube, is particularly appealing to the elderly, which is amazing because in the United States, YouTube just blinks 12 for most elderly people. But they're, I guess, the technically adept among them are very enamored of this interlocking web of right-wing propaganda, such that sector, that style of YouTube participation, for whatever reason, is known in Korean it's known in Korean in a Korean word, but the Korean words for it apparently translate loosely to denture tube. Like, this is very definitely an elderly pastime. Elderly oriented. So, denture tube, South Korea's YouTube conspiracy machine, according to Moon Ki-hoon in the Korea Herald. And I have to caution everybody, I don't know anything about the Korea Herald. I don't know anything about Moon Ki-hoon. Clearly things have gone a little, sideways in Korea. And I could be, for all I know, I'm reading a crazy conspiracy theory. But it was so interesting to hear how close it was and to see this other person say, yeah, this is actually what's going on. But not a lot of reporting. And if you search around on the search engines for what's going on with Yoon and YouTube or denture tube or whatever, there's this story. But everything else is about the insurrection / martial law / impeachment. All right, well, I can see we're going to run into the roadblock of the top of the hour break before we get very far. So maybe what I can do, actually, I can read the rest of that Sang-Sin Lee thread, and then we can start with the article afterwards. I mentioned to you that all of this is based on this weird conspiracy theory that they believe that all of the opposition party are North Korean spies, and that his imposition of martial law was, designed like in Trump's mind, to save the country, and everybody who's against it is the one who's confused about what's really happening on. Now, another parallel to what has been going on in the United States, right? Even after this failed insurrection, Yoon keeps appointing far-right YouTubers to office. Yoon believed that the opposition had, you'll never believe it, rigged election results. Where have we heard that before? On December 3rd, Yoon deployed hundreds of troops not only to the National Assembly to block the legislature from coming in and voting, but also to the National Election Commission in an attempt to seize election materials, aiming to uncover proof of election fraud by the opposition. How familiar is that? Yoon was living entirely within his own fabricated reality. It seems that he initiated the insurrection out of desperation as he faced imminent exposure of a political scandal involving both himself and the First Lady, and ironically, every accusation was a confession, because accusations were that they had rigged the election results. Amazing. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So, did you get all that? I know it was disjointed reading you this Sang-Sin Lee thread. And again, there's not much I can tell you about Sang-Sin Lee or vouching, by way of vouching for him or not. This is someone who has put that out there. It sounds like it might be something you should investigate, and I can't tell you about the veracity of any of it, but if it's one of those moments on social media, big if true. But is it big? It might not be big for us. It's just sort of big for, the rest of the world. Like, what's happening here? That one part that really struck me, one, appointing all the weirdos, that sounds familiar. Two, thinking that you were saving the country when you were in fact launching an insurrection, that's familiar. Trying to take over the national election apparatus in search of proof that there was fraud by the other guys, when in fact everybody thinks there was fraud by you, because there was, and you're looking to cover it up by accusing everyone else of fraud. What? That sounds familiar too, but like the idea of let's go seize the voting machines and the vote tally machines and the ballots and everything. As it turns out that Yoon is just 3 Sidney Powells stacked up inside of a trench coat. What else what are they doing? Do they think that the Italians used satellites to manipulate their election? Anything like that? I don't know. Well, he then moves on in his thread to dealing with the impeachment, and it's somewhat less interesting as a parallel, although it's interesting in its own right and procedurally how they do things. But I was more interested in this sort of slide into dementia by the elderly and extreme right wing of South Korea. Might as well be. They think it's North Korea doing it. And maybe it is. I don't know. They seem to be, it's the weirdest thing. Isn't it strange? Does it not strike you as strange that in multiple countries that are, started at least as purported democracies, end up with right-wing and sometimes far-right-wing elected governments, and then it turns out that they're deeply enmeshed in conspiracy world, and it's the same conspiracy over and over. I mean, why invent a new one, I guess? It could be just that. It's not, not that there's a worldwide conspiracy necessarily, but rather, hey, I just saw this work in the United States. I wonder if I could make it work in Korea, because that's where I'm from. Or is it's the same conspiracy over and over again, and yes, they're just one side of the global balance of power is using it against another. I do not know. So here's the story again from the Korea Herald, and it begins on the night of December 3rd, just minutes after President Yoon Suk Yeol's I'm trying my best with pronunciation, his shocking declaration of martial law, dozens of elite military commandos, like SEAL Team 6, descended on an obscure office building on the outskirts of Seoul. Their target was the headquarters of the National Election Commission, the country's otherwise staid bureaucratic body that oversees elections. And, of course, you just saw that same style of raid go on through different mechanism in North Carolina. We're going to take over the elections. Anyway, the raid, like they all have here in the United States, whether it was Sidney Powell's proposal to send the military to seize all election assets everywhere, no matter where they are in what states, or it was Tina Peters and crew breaking into the storage facilities in Colorado or whatever, the raid proved anticlimactic. The commandos only managed to snap a few photos of internal server systems before retreating. They didn't really have any idea why they were there, like most of the conspiracy theorists, failing to compromise any voting data. But the incident pulled back the curtain on something far more unsettling: how a parallel universe of online conspiracy theories cultivated on the fringes of South Korea's social media had made its way into the country's highest corridors of power. Ironically playing the dramatic music because, we're watching the same thing happen here daily and have been for many, many years, and now we're watching it all. We rid ourselves of it briefly, and then we're watching it happen all over again and just saying, well, I guess that's just the way our system works. The next day, the defense minister, Kim Yong-hyun, now under arrest for insurrection charges, in case you were wondering, geez, was it an insurrection? Well, somebody's sitting in jail for it as insurrection, so I guess it is. And here we are in the United States with other people sitting in jail for it on insurrection charges. Well, not insurrection charges, seditious conspiracy charges. It's suspected that this all adds up into insurrection, but we're dithering over whether or not it was really an insurrection, and we've dithered too long because even though the evidence may in fact lead us to charge people with insurrection, they're all going to be pardoned in a couple of days anyway. So, la-di-da. Anyway, where were we? Right, Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun, now under arrest for insurrection, admitted to ordering troops to seize servers related to the election upon Yoon's orders. Amazing parallel there. The troops were to look for servers containing data on the 2020 and 2024 parliamentary elections, both of which had given the progressive opposition majority control. So therefore it had to be rigged, of course. Now, by the way, telling even elite troops, I need you to go in there and seize the servers. Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Yes, sir. Hoorah, or whatever you would say. And then, have you got any pictures of these servers so we know what to grab, right? And, they show them a picture of the electronic equipment. And I'm sure they were like, yeah, let's go. Kick in the door. All right, nobody move. Give me the servers. Here they are. Now, which one has the 2020 and which one has the 2024 parliamentary election data on it? I don't know. There's no picture that can tell me that. And they're not labeled. So they took some photos and left. A very confused conspiracy theory, as many of them often are. So anyway, though law enforcement authorities and the Supreme Court had repeatedly thrown out these claims of voter fraud, anyone? Similarities? No? Conspiracy theories continue to run wild on what Koreans dismissively, most of them, call denture tube. It's tul tube, apparently. It's my best attempt at doing some Korean there. Teul is how they've transliterated it here. Tul tube. A constellation of right-wing YouTube channels that enjoy a particularly avid following among older conservative viewers. Okay? So that's where the denture tube thing, it's quite funny actually. But we'll have to start figuring out a way that we can work that into our discourse here. My friends blast these videos in our group chats practically 24/7, says Kang, an 85-year-old, oh boy, Gyeonggi province resident. Gyeonggi. Good luck. If you're Korean, you know exactly what they're talking about. Gyeon, Gyeon, 2 G's, GGI, Gyeonggi. No idea. And I often find that when I hear Koreans pronounce things that are even transliterated for us into English and Roman lettering, I'm like, why are you making the sound that way? The G's and the K's and the B's and I don't know. They all they have their own, it's almost like it's its own language and we don't understand it. But I'm trying my best. And I have a little bit of background. We have an awful large Korean-American population here, so I'm a little bit more exposed to some of this. My kids went through Taekwondo for years, so I get some idea about pronunciation, but only enough to know I'm not doing it right. Anyway, but I could have guessed that even without having any knowledge or exposure to Korean culture. Anyway, Kang, the 85-year-old, says, my friends blast these videos in our group chats practically 24/7. He asked only to be identified by her surname. I don't know if you could tell Kang one way or the other. It's a surname. That's not going to help me any. By her surname. She describes a social environment where refusing to engage with conspiracy theories about rigged elections and North Korean spies leads to swift ostracism. It's the villages, but in Korea. They mock me as a leftist commie when I don't play along, she says. This really is kind of a scary parallel. The ecosystem that shapes Kang's senior social circle represents a distinctly Korean spin on a global phenomenon. Is it? We'll see how distinctly Korean. I mean, it certainly has parallels, but I'm sure it has some sort of element of distinctly Korean flavor. I'm trying my best with this name, by the way, but I guess here in America, Kang, that's the surname that's given here for this woman. We would anglicize that as Kang, I guess, like Kang and Kodos, right? Kang, we might then say Kang, but it's probably also, as I was saying, what I was learning, what I've been able to pick up around Korean American culture, it might be that they blur the line between G's and K's very often, and it might be more like gang, then Kang, but then that's going to make you think it's spelled G-O-N-G, and it isn't. All right. Well, it's not spelled anything because it's Korean lettering, but transliterated, we run into the same problem a lot with Arabic or every romantic language that we're transliterating from across alphabets. Anyway, that's not what we came here to talk about. It was this ecosystem that shapes Kang's senior social circle. Here in Korea, right-wing YouTube personalities don't just command massive followings. They've built something akin to digital fiefdoms, or fiefdoms if you prefer that pronunciation, which may or may not be right, where live chat sections overflow with supportive messages and donations, primarily from retirees with time and disposable income. Although usually the retirees here in the United States say, no, I am on a fixed income, but in fact give away their money just as easily, just the same. This is one of the things that older people do. Worldwide, I guess. Comment sections form echo chambers where even mild skepticism gets shouted down. We don't have that. These channels follow the typical playbook of reactionary media worldwide, resonating especially with older South Koreans steeped in Cold War-era anxieties. They offer black and white narratives blending cultural nostalgia and anti-communist rhetoric, often portraying North Korean operatives as hidden infiltrators lurking at every level of government. Sort of their own version of the deep state, I guess, except they're North Koreans. It's the wrong state, but it's very deep, nonetheless. Their hosts pose as crusading truth-tellers, exposing, this is the hosts, not the host of the North Korean spies, but rather the YouTube hosts. They pose as crusading truth-tellers, exposing what they paint as treasonous collusion between progressives and foreign adversaries, all while prominently displaying their bank account numbers for donations. Okay, sounds familiar there too. I send donations during live streams, maybe $10 or $20 at a time to show my support, says a 65-year-old psychiatrist. Oh dear, how are we going to fix this? Who regularly tunes into a political commentary channel with 1.8 million subscribers. Speaking on condition of anonymity, she describes herself as a proud conservative who, quote, loves her country, unquote, and has lost all faith in mainstream media. I can't believe it. I can't stand the left-wing media's grip on this country, she claims. What? Who ever heard of such a thing? As of May 2024, 5 leading right-wing YouTube channels boast over 1 million subscribers each, with another 14 surpassing the 500,000 mark. Increasingly outlandish conspiracy theories have found fertile ground in these outlets. Some claimed that the 2022 Itaewon Halloween crowd crush, I am not familiar with it, but perhaps you are, that killed 159 people, was orchestrated by undercover enemy forces to undermine Yoon's presidency. I don't think anybody really held him responsible for that, but okay. Others insist that the January assassination attempt on opposition leader Lee Jae-myung, who survived a knife attack to his neck. Well, I don't know if I recall that one. We must have seen it in the news, but an assassination attempt on an opposition leader. The claim is, of course, what else would it possibly be in right-wing land? That it was staged. Crisis actors. While mainstream conservative politicians have traditionally kept these conspiracy-minded influencers at arm's length, also familiar, the current administration's coziness with these fringe voices has occasionally surfaced in notable ways. Some right-wing YouTubers even scored invites to Yoon's inauguration, which is about to happen in the United States for sure. As a matter of fact, I just saw a story today. I did not put it aside because it's just part of the crush of ludicrous stories that are all, they're all probably true and everything. I'm not saying they're ludicrous in that sense, but they're crazy happenings. An outgoing member of Congress a Republican who for some reason still has tickets, I guess, to the inauguration, has invited, I guess, someone who's a constituent and who was a January 6th defendant who was caught with weapons on January 6th. And nonetheless is, I guess, free and available to attend the Trump inauguration as this person's guest, even though this person will no longer be a member of Congress, but something, yada, yada. We have the same thing going on here. Right-wing YouTubers scored invites to Yoon's inauguration, and long circulating rumors about Yoon's own viewing habits gained new credibility after last week's crisis. Recently, an appointee tapped to head civil servant training was revealed to have run a YouTube channel pushing claims about Chinese communist infiltration of local politics, content he promptly deleted after his appointment. And I guess Some of that will be going on here in the United States, but I think increasingly you'll find people will just leave the content up there because now that's in vogue as pro-administration propaganda. Anyway, we're seeing something exceptional here with few parallels in the developed world, says Lee Jong-myung, which is amazing for a number of reasons, including, two things. One, what do you mean there's few parallels in the developed world? There's one staring you in the face from the biggest, most lumbering and publicity-hungry country in the world, the United States, where it's happening right in front of your face, and I'm sure you're aware of it, whereas I am also sure that we're not aware of what's going on in your country, except now, reading the Korea Herald. But it's pretty amazing. But okay, fine. Maybe it's not happening in every place in the developed world because some places are more resistant to it. Finland, of course, is training its youth to resist this stuff and has been for 10 years. But then problem number 2 with this. I am not sure if this is a typo or the previous one was a typo, or it may just be the case that there are, in fact, 2 people named Lee Jae-myung, one of whom was previously mentioned as the target of the assassination attempt in January, and the other of which is a senior media researcher at Sungkyunkwan University. Because that's what appears to be happening here. A minute ago, we were just told that people insisted that the January assassination attempt on opposition leader Lee Jae-myung was staged, and just 1, 2, 3 paragraphs later, we're seeing something exceptional here with few parallels in the developed world, says Lee Jong-myung, senior media researcher at Sungkyunkwan University. Believe me, that was a stab at something I'm sure I've mispronounced, the university. He traces the phenomenon back to the 2016 impeachment, another one, of former President Park Geun-hye, maybe H-Y-E, which left many conservatives in the country feeling betrayed by the mainstream media. And so, tit for tat, we're going to impeach or believe that all opposition leaders have rigged the election. And then look what happened. They ended up impeaching a second conservative president. This is a disgrace. We got to put a stop to it. That's when the right wing really started their exodus to YouTube, where they found voices willing to tell them what they wanted to hear. The phenomenon later spread to left-wing circles as well, creating an increasingly polarized media landscape. I can't believe it. Last week's martial law declaration sent these channels into overdrive. One prominent YouTuber with 919,000 subscribers, who claims Yoon watches his videos every night, quickly praised the move and declared the raid on the Election Commission a game changer. Guess what? It didn't change anything. Another influencer recently tapped as a state radio host, despite his history of hard-right commentary. Here, of course, it would be because of their history of hard-right commentary. Urged ruling party lawmakers to block impeachment efforts and reorganize the war front against voter fraud. I just bring that up in light of the nomination of Kari Lake to control state radio assets. Voice of America. I mean, I couldn't be any clearer. Will she be using the state radio channels to urge ruling party lawmakers to block any impeachment efforts and reorganize the war front against voter fraud? Probably. The success of these antics is reflected in their earnings. Of course, YouTube is involved. 2 right-wing political commentators dominated YouTube earnings in South Korea last November, ranking first and second in super chat donations with $49,000 and $44,600 respectively, according to analytics platform Playboard. Not Playboy, Playboard. These earnings place them among the YouTube's top dozen channels worldwide in terms of the most super chatted channels. Super chat. Okay, something we ought to get into? I don't know. There's $50,000 to be had there. Content posted on their channels relies heavily on clickbait thumbnails and sensationalist headlines making demonstrably false claims. Their latest lies include, ready? We're involved in this one. Supposed U.S. government statements dismissing insurrection charges against martial law participants. Although that's actually, probably a lie, yes, as they say, but probably some people trying to actually do that, right? It would be in the interest of January 6thers, I guess, to point to Korea and say that, too, is not an insurrection. I don't know. And fake warnings from Washington that Yoon's impeachment would place Korea under Chinese and North Korean control. At a fundamental level, there's the platform's well-documented machinery working behind the scenes, algorithms and monetization systems that fuel this spiral into extremism. The incentive structure of these social media platforms is quite simple, Lee explains. More extreme content attracts more engaged viewers who reward creators with both views and direct donations. This creates a feedback loop pushing everything toward the fringes. Everyone should remember that. If you like to push me closer to the fringes, donate money. And if you are not interested in my moving closer to the fringes, you can persuade me not to by donating money. That brings me to thanks to new donors. I actually do have a couple new ones to thank, but let's finish this article here. Unlike traditional newsrooms with, editorial standards and fact-checking processes, these channels operate without any real accountability, Lee notes, whoever Lee may be. Could be the opposition leader gets stabbed in the neck. Maybe an opposition researcher. I don't know. Maybe both. They can make wild claims one day and simply move on to new conspiracies the next, while their audience revels in each new revelation. Well, you're supposed to revel in a revelation, don't you think? What's particularly concerning is how these spaces create a false consensus, says Lee. Twitter is not real life. Touch grass. Denture tube is not real life. Touch grass. No, well, okay. We don't want to. Viewers surrounded only by like-minded commentators begin to believe their views represent the mainstream rather than a radical fringe. So, wow, that's pretty amazing overall and sounds so damn familiar, I don't even know what to tell you. It's actually kind of shocking. I'm going to go over to Google and put in Lee Jae-myung's name and see what I come up with. Does Wikipedia have a, disambiguation listing for them? Are there more than one? This one just goes straight to the politician who I assume is the opposition leader who was attacked. And by the way, let's see, I'm going to scroll down here. It's, his political career, I assume he was? This is the guy who was in fact attacked, wasn't he? It doesn't seem to say anything here. Oh, here, assassination attempt, January 2024. That's true, or at least it's noted here in Wikipedia. By the way, it does say right up top here that among his previous positions, governor of that very same province where Kang is from, Gyeonggi province. Oh my goodness. Is any pronunciation guides available? I don't know. Not what we're here for. So, okay. I don't know if that means anything in particular, but there it is. I'm curious about, maybe I can research off the air about this researcher at the university and see what the name of that person actually is, or whether they, in fact, have the same name. That would be kind of amazing. Certainly a lot of commonality among surnames there. And Lee, it could be any one of millions of people with the Lee surname. I don't know. Oh, there's also a football player, that is to say soccer, who's of the same name, and that's kind of amazing. So I guess if there's a famous soccer player who also has the same name, anyway, I guess anything is possible. Goodness. All right. Well, I didn't mean to get tied up in that necessarily. So stories, I don't know. I don't think I need to add any more necessarily to the drone story. I gave you the sense that the HuffPost wanted to convey that these drones aren't just like regular drones. They are really big and there's a lot of them. But I thought the story did do a good job in just explaining how very weird the situation is, in that no branch, no level of government is willing to claim responsibility for it or any particular knowledge about it such that it can be unraveled. And it's kind of odd. I don't know. We have that on the record. I'll be very curious to see what comes of any investigations into it. Okay, a couple other things I definitely want to bring to your attention, but of course it is almost break time. I'll say this right before the break. I did see what purported to be breaking news last night, and I haven't seen a written report on it just yet, but it sounds like the Democratic caucus, the House Democratic caucus, has given the go-ahead to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's bid to be ranking member on the Government-Oversight Committee. That's the leadership post to which she had aspired. And there was it was a contested thing, but it looks like she will in fact prevail. The more senior Democrat who had a better claim in terms of seniority was Jerry Connolly, member from right here in Virginia, and it's very often chaired by members who are local to the government oversight, local to Washington, because of the large number of federal employees in their districts. Let's talk about that after the break. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We still have 1,000 directions to go in here. But just to double back, even though I was going to double back on AOC and the Oversight Committee. I will do that, but let me double back first on the Voice of America thing. Just happened to see this go by, and this made some sense given the way I saw the announcement framed, where Trump was saying, well, I'm not directly appointing Kari Lake head of Voice of America. There are reasons for that. But she will be appointed later by a person whom I'll appoint to oversee this whole global communications position. And it was something of an insult. Why didn't you just name me that? Well, there are reasons for that, too. But so there was a hint in the way the phrasing, which is amazing, given how Trump usually blows right past those things and just says, I'm appointing her the head of Voice of America, and won't discuss the fact that he's not actually appointing her directly and can't supposedly directly appoint her. Then I saw Tegan Goddard's Political Wire on Blue Sky pointing out one problem with Trump's pick of Kari Lake. According to Brian Stelter, presidents don't ordinarily pick the director of Voice of America, an international news broadcaster funded by the U.S. government, but President-elect Donald Trump says he wants his ally Kari Lake to take over at VOA. Voice of America itself, though, says it has a firewall in place that prohibits interference by any U.S. government official, and that would be the President of the United States, unless, of course, that's not, because the GSA has said, he's not an officer of the United States. It's okay if he owns the Trump Hotel. Sure. And leases it from the GSA, leasing the old post office pavilion. Never mind all that. But anyway, supposedly this firewall prevents interference by any U.S. government official in the objective, independent reporting of news. Well, that's going to be out the window, too. I guess word is here that, and there's a further discussion of it from Sarah Binder, who says Congress revamped, over Trump's veto, by the way, in 2021, a board that oversees Voice of America. The board is now 3-3 divided between Democrats and Republicans, and then the Secretary of State is the tiebreaker there. It takes a majority of the board to appoint a VOA head, 5 votes to remove. Once Rubio is confirmed as Secretary of State, the board will likely appoint Kari Lake. If the VOA director resigns, or is fired, or falls out of a window, and the GOP board members are on board with Trump's pick. So he doesn't make the appointment directly. I'm just astounded that he actually, put a hint in there that there really was a hitch, because usually he ignores that whole thing. And then the rest of the world ignores the fact that the president can't pick the VOA head, because it looks like he made the announcement picking a VOA head, and then she ended up as the VOA head. So that must be the way it works, right? It's not, but, only you and I pay attention to stuff like that, it turns out. And Sarah Binder, of course, who, by the way, also is looking ahead to apparently the Republicans in the Senate under John Thune are floating the idea of using reconciliation bills to do some of the less popular things that they have in mind because of the way it protects their legislation from the filibuster. But they have lots of things that they want to do. And guess what? They want to try to do 2 reconciliation bills in the same calendar year, which every once in a while Democrats said they wanted to do and Republicans said was impossible and a huge violation of the rules. It is not, but Republicans said it was so that they would intimidate the Democrats out of doing it. They didn't want to look like rule breakers. And now the moment they take over, they will break that rule and say, we don't know what you're talking about. Rules against 2 reconciliation bills in a single calendar year. What's the matter with you? The only person who can stop that is the parliamentarian, and that guy might fall out a window. So anyway, keep an eye on that. That's yet to come. Back to AOC and what she's been up to. Like I said, I haven't seen any writing this morning confirming the report yesterday that she had the votes necessary, and that's one of the reasons that you won't see writing confirming that is they haven't had that vote. What they have had, I guess, is an informal sounding inside the House Democratic Caucus that says, yeah, we probably will back AOC's bid to be ranking Democratic member on this committee. The real process, though, has to involve usually the House Democratic Caucus Steering and Policy Committee making that recommendation. Now, that recommendation can be usually accepted in the caucus. You can contest it, and ultimately, very often, if there is a contested race and the forces are evenly divided, they'll have a vote in the full House Democratic Caucus to figure it out. So if you're signaling that you have secured the votes of a majority of the House Democratic Caucus, you can kind of skip that part, and then the House Steering and Policy, the Dem Steering and Policy Committee will very often tend to read the writing on the wall and say, well, the entirety of the caucus will overrule us if we make a different recommendation. So why don't we go ahead and make this recommendation that she be elected as ranking member on the Oversight Committee. Now, I was saying that one of the major contenders for this job is Jerry Connolly, and he's from Northern Virginia, and he's got considerable seniority over AOC and pretty much everybody else on the committee among the Democrats. And that ordinarily it is a D.C. area member who rises to the top, and it's mostly because in the main, the day-to-day job of the Government Oversight Committee has lots and lots to do with overseeing federal employees, and this is, of course, one of the highest concentration of federal employees in the country in the Washington, D.C. area. So it's mostly constituents, and it's from a constituent service standpoint makes the most sense to have a D.C. area member in charge. And in fact, the previous high-ranking Democrat on the panel was Jamie Raskin. He's going to be moving over, isn't he, taking the reins at Judiciary, but he was extraordinarily effective on the Oversight Committee, particularly in its investigations into the insurrection, January 6th, Donald Trump's varied corruption stories, because, he's great at that stuff and he's a good attack dog, and he can continue to do the same from the Judiciary Committee, I suppose. But his claim on high rank in the Oversight Committee was based in many ways on his proximity to Washington, D.C. He's a Maryland congressman, and the reins ordinarily would probably go over to Connolly from Virginia. But I've pointed out numerous times on the show that it is very rarely the case that ideology drives the outcome of these leadership races, and it is, most often best explained by money. The members who have raised and dispersed the most money from their leadership PACs, the point of which is in fact to campaign for leadership positions, are usually the ones who win, even when there's a strong ideological reason to go the other direction. And I began illustrating this with the failure of Congressman John Murtha to assume leadership of the Democratic caucus. He wanted to be majority. When we were in the minority or majority? When he wanted to be Democratic leader. And he was a very popular guy, and he was basically attempting to say, hey, elect me, the original, one of the earliest, I guess, opponents of the Iraq War, instead of these other leaders who, though they eventually came to understand that the Iraq War was a bit of a mistake, originally supported it. Why wouldn't you want me rather than them? And the answer is we do, but we vote based on who has helped us gain election. We go with the money. We don't say this outright. It just happens to be so. I owe a favor to somebody who helped me when I was in trouble, and it's going to manifest itself in the form of the vote here. And that's how those things work, generally speaking. And it has held true. As it happens, there was one other member who had expressed some interest in running for the top position on the committee, who actually appeared in the surface to have raised and dispersed even more money than AOC. But I didn't get to look at the granular level at whether or not the members that they helped in fact succeeded and became members of Congress and are there to cast a vote in the caucus. And that sometimes makes the difference. Now, it may also be the case that he decided, although I have more money and have spent more money and I'm interested in the seat, I have bowed out of the race, or I'm thinking of some other position that I might assume instead. I'm not sure what happened there. But anyway, the good news is it sounds like AOC gains access to that leadership position, which if Democrats are able to take over the House at some point would probably be expected to convert into the chairmanship. Politico is covering the developments. Nicholas Wu and Daniela Diaz writing under the headline, AOC's oversight rise marks Democratic generational shift. And that's certainly the much more favorable story, and I love it, and I'm glad that that's the headline instead, even though I think the truth is that it marks it does. Her being there will mark a generational shift, and it's going to be great. And you should absolutely play it as a generational shift. It helps us much more if we do. What probably explains the outcome is the same old, which I also think is amazing and great. And among ourselves, we ought to be talking about, because among activist Democrats and just, run-of-the-mill rank and file folks who get excited enough about things to talk about them on social media, this is a big charge for them. They love it. AOC is a very dynamic figure. I like AOC a lot, not just for what she does, ideologically. My favorite thing about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was that she showed me early on, when it was so easy, it would have been so easy to just dismiss her as a lightweight and interested in being a showboat and making headlines and doing nothing else. She actually started almost immediately to put in the work on this secret formula for success and gaining real influence and gravitas inside the House Democratic Caucus, starting a leadership PAC right away. And she's not the only member to do so. There are some who really are lightweights and showboats who start their leadership packs right away in order to become leaders so they can showboat some more. But she understood right away, and really her constituency, original constituency, is of the type that probably would have enthusiastically cheered her, eschewing anything to do with leadership PACs and raising excess campaign funds and handing out money, the dirty stuff of PACs and big donations and yada. I don't know what the source of her money is in the leadership PAC, and she may be very selective about where she takes it, and if so, it's just that much more remarkable that she was able to raise as much and disperse as much money as she did. But she played a very, very insider game, one that is usually looked down upon by her core constituency. She was very savvy to do it and to tell people, and I guess anybody who asks, no, you got it all wrong. We're certainly against big corporate money in politics, but that doesn't mean we're against all money in politics, and it doesn't mean that we're going to give up on a very simple formula that could really launch us to prominence and give us the opportunity to drive policy. We're not going to, hold our noses and turn up our noses at this and sacrifice the ability to do the things we want to do. And as we heard from the clip that Greg recommended to us early on, do things that will change people's lives. That's what you need to do, more so than winning or raising money. Anyway, it's just very savvy, and I really liked the fact that she understood that, no, she shouldn't just reflexively turn her nose up at raising money and working hard and passing out campaign donations. And, I mean, who wouldn't want her to exploit this? If it's really true that ideology doesn't drive things but money does, then most people would be counting her out. People who don't understand this dynamic would be counting her out. She'll never ascend in leadership. She's too radical, and she's a social molest. And, all that kind of, she'll never rise. And, some people will resurrect this in order to attack her and Democrats in general. But I think people have begun to see through that facade anyway. But for her to say, if it really is just a matter of money, if my personality is such that I am raising a national profile for myself, and it is, right? And justifiably so, can I convert that into dollars? And can I convert those dollars into leadership PAC and convert leadership PAC into votes for leadership races later on? And if so, I should go ahead and do it. Interestingly, thereby proving a couple of things. One, that yes, money is still the biggest factor in politics and can overcome ideology, but it can overcome ideology from the other direction too, and make people who would otherwise be allergic to my ideology nonetheless vote to elevate me into leadership. So kind of genius, and I kind of like it. And to that extent, or for that reason, I won't be too upset about public-facing journalism that I think really misses the true dynamic of how leadership elections work, because awesome. A, the dynamic is still working, and B, it looks completely different. And there are now headlines that Democrats are embracing generational and ideological shifts and change. Awesome. We almost never get those kind of headlines. Imagine if they actually reported the truth this time, and it was a cynical ploy, and what a hypocrite, and da-da-da-da-da. Well, good. I'm glad it's not. And it's not the point I'm trying to make. I'm trying to make the point that the rules of the game are actually, in the Democratic circles, very often the same for everybody. Not the case when you're dealing with Republicans. So why not play the game? Why not use the very same and easy to understand mechanism to launch ideologically left-leaning Democrats into leadership, if that really works? Well, it does, and here it is. So do it. Great. I'm very happy about it. I'm going to read the rest of these articles myself offline and see if there's anything else to add to all that, and instead shift gears and offer you something different on Trump once again. This time from Philip Bump, and a week has gone by and we haven't said anything from Philip Trump yet. Amanda Marcotte, too, is due for a boost, but I don't know. I'm going to see if I can shoehorn something in here today. But Trump's fake it till you make it autocracy. That was a headline that really grabbed my eye. I want to see a little bit about that. Get rid of all permitting, unwind birthright citizenship, easy peasy. If you pretend the myriad laws preventing such moves don't exist, and I know we all say, LOL, laws, and to some extent, that's actually a thing, but we just watched him obey the law somehow, for some reason, on appointing Kari Lake to Voice of America. Now, he may defy it later on, that's true, but this gets at a point that I think is really essential for just our figuring out what to do day to day, because it's really difficult to comment on all this stuff when there's no laws, no rules. I don't know what could happen. You don't know what could happen. Things that we thought were illegal turn out to just be interpreted as totally normal and always has been. You know, it's really difficult to nail this stuff down. And it's also difficult to reconcile that with Trump's ineptness, his brashness, his proclivity for just proclaiming stuff is true when it really isn't, even when he knows it isn't true. And he's just trying to just sort of bluster and bluff people into, I guess, that stuff which then gets labeled as surrender in advance, obeying in advance, right? Even when it doesn't really have anything to do with it, or say, this is a presidential power, I can definitely name this person to this office. No, you can't. But if you bluster and scream and make it look like it's an inevitability and everybody decides to get out of your way anyway and just let it happen, then it's indistinguishable from a presidential power. So this is kind of interesting. All of the things that he's threatening to do, and you got to take it seriously, and we need to fight, and we need to organize, because he could do this. That's all true. On the other hand, there's definitely some things that he'll threaten and just not do or forget about or somehow decide to honor the law on. I still, like I've said a million times, cannot explain to you why the threats of resignation from his first administration dissuaded him from doing anything. I don't know. There's just certain things. I mean, I guess we ought to be finding, I don't know if there's any way to exploit that, but apparently that's a real weakness for him. So what's Bump saying here? All of these things, maybe they don't happen. Maybe it's just bluster. But it can't afford to treat it that way necessarily. Prepare for it being real, but don't be surprised if the whole thing falls apart. The proposal, he begins, from President-elect Donald Trump seems so simple as to be obvious. And here's a quote, right? I missed this one from the other day. We didn't talk about it. I saw it. But any person or company investing $1 billion or more in the United States of America, and there's no way of interpreting what does it mean to invest in the United States of America. Well, any person who invests $1 billion or more in the United States will receive full expedited approvals and permits, including, but in no way limited to, all environmental approvals. Now, Elon Musk, who gained access to Trump's inner circle after spending heavily on the election, celebrated the idea on social media, the one he owns, that is, Twitter. This is awesome. That's the celebration. Such an awesome idea that one might ask why it had never been done before. And the answer, as is often the case when Musk embraces some insight into how government works, is that it's more complicated than it looks. There are a lot of laws in place that a president cannot simply sidestep, and some very good reasons those laws are there. For example, given their druthers, some business leaders would ignore environmental rules entirely if it made them money. Good for the businesses, not necessarily great for the citizens whom the government is meant to serve. For decades, America was governed by people who might have disagreed with such laws, but who understood that they were laws. Rejecting laws isn't generally something that presidents or legislators can do by fiat, so groups or parties seeking to change the law engaged in the slow process of accruing political power that allowed them to do so. Trump is not a person who shares that understanding, or at least is not someone who shares the view that he should be encumbered by any existing process. He sees a bureaucracy that limits how and where businesses can operate, and operating from the point of view of a business owner and lacking close advisors empowered to offer a countervailing perspective, insists that he will simply make it all go away. These laws have been the subject of furious fights among businesses, labor, and citizen advocates for decades, but those fights have generally been out of the public's eye, as happens in a representative democracy. So a normal person, or it seems the world's richest one, hears Trump say that it's all unnecessary and instantly reversible, and lacking context, perhaps thinks, sure, makes sense. It's important to note that this response benefits Trump, whose decades as the monarchical leader of a private business established expectations of power wielding that are discordant with the American system. He is proposing that his power as president necessarily takes precedence over the power of the legislature. That he, not lawmakers or the courts, gets to decide how things work. He is presenting his power as autocratic, and in doing so, tries to establish an expectation about his power that everyone else will have to dismantle. It's not just on this issue. There's the recess appointments plan, for example, or birthright citizenship, which came up in an interview last week. To NBC News' Kristen Welker, he suggested that there would be some achievable means of reversing the grant of citizenship to babies born in the United States, something codified in the U.S. Constitution. Like ordinarily people view that as that's at least difficult to change, right? He pledged to end this policy on his first day in office somehow. Asked how, he sort of shrugged, saying that he would maybe have to go back to the people, but that we have to end it. You just have to. So they're gonna. Birthright citizenship, by virtue of being articulated in the 14th Amendment, is a trickier thing to reverse than permitting standards. It would require, quote, going back to the people. Yes. How? To change what the Constitution stipulates. In each case, though, Trump sidesteps the idea that there is any value to the way things are and asserts that he has or will have a way to simply undo what has been established. He approaches the issues like an autocrat and forces others to do the messy and often ungratifying work of explaining how these things emerged in the first place, and to argue that democracy means compromise rather than edict. But of course, he no longer says he's interested in democracy. So I guess that solves that problem, thanks to, what's his name, Mencius Moldbug, etc. That said, Trump and aides like Stephen Miller often frame Trump's power in the context of an overwhelming public support that doesn't exist, right? We hear discussion about Trump's landslide victory in the 2024 election, an election in which his popular vote victory was the smallest for a winning president since 1968. My entire lifetime, right? Or that he has a mandate by virtue of winning less than half the votes cast last month. Winning the presidency obviously grants the winner the power to administer the executive branch, but it does not afford the president the power to act without constraint. Or at least isn't supposed to, I would say. We have been given every indication that Trump in his second term will attempt to act as if such constraints don't exist. I mean, we saw it the first time. That's what he does, right? Many Americans, supporters and detractors alike, are skeptical that he will be held in check by a Supreme Court in which a third of the justices were appointed by Trump and which recently determined that presidents, and Trump specifically, were immune from criminal prosecution. But there are a lot of other checks at all levels of government that, as in his first term, will make acting like an autocrat more difficult than it might seem. In fact, we have a recent demonstration of this effect. In 2020, Trump attempted to retain the presidency despite losing the election. That's definitely against the rules. His effort to sidestep democracy ground to a halt thanks to the cumulative efforts of local election administrators, state legislators, and federal actors, all of whom understood and adhered to the constraints that Trump pretended didn't exist. It certainly wasn't painless, but the system held, sort of, kind of. Trump may not have taken away a lesson from what happened after November 2020, but the rest of us should, and maybe we should be talking to the Koreans. All right. So that brings us almost to our full time for today. I mean, I was thinking maybe it might be worth just spending a second or two on what was happening in England with Brexit that I hinted at with Greg. You'll all be able to read the full article, but just to give you a flavor of the ridiculousness going on here. Right now, it's just responses to polling, though. Majority of Brexit voters, quote, would accept free movement, unquote, to access single market. That's the headline in The Guardian. And for those of you who don't, have any understanding, perhaps, of the European Union, that's the whole thing. That was the whole point, and it's the entirety of what the European Union is about. If you will join us and accept free movement, you will be able to access our single market. That's the trade that you make. Europe-wide polling finds the UK and EU leaders now out of step with public opinion and pursue an ambitious reset. What do you know? A majority of Britons who voted to leave the EU, it turns out, would now accept a return to free movement in exchange for access to the single market, which, again, is just basically like declaring, I don't know if this is not clear necessarily to Americans, but it's basically like saying, I am now in favor of peanut butter, and I frequently enjoy jelly. I have 2 pieces of bread and a knife, but I don't like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. However, here's what I would like you to do. In exchange for giving me bread covered in jelly, I will give you bread covered in peanut butter and then consume the results. That's actually what I'm interested in. I would like to have peanut butter and jelly on bread presented to me for my consumption. However, I continue to insist I do not like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Doesn't really work that way. So, that's where we are. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is mentioned here, and Donald Trump's election as U.S. president has fundamentally changed the context of EU-UK relations. This report by the European Council on Foreign Relations, a think tank, said, there is a remarkable consensus on both sides of the channel that the time is ripe for a reassessment of EU-UK relations, with closer relations being the most popular option in every country surveyed, and public opinion on the question well ahead of government stances. I guess they're still stuck trying to deliver on the promise of Brexit fully, but now everybody who wanted Brexit has changed their minds, just won't say so. All right. Very interesting. Hey, if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. That's bad, too.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with Waldman.
Well, do stay tuned now for Justice Putnam and the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Story at the top of the list here today. Democratic House members went on the offense against MAGA. Yay! In the latest Foreign Affairs Committee hearing. I'd like to hear about that. And we'll be back tomorrow with a all-new but pre-recorded version of the show heading into the weekend. See you then.